Hi, my name is Wes Walton. I'm somewhat of an expert in strategic laziness, as I call it. It's not the classic laziness that we think of when we see, I don't know, Homer Simpson sitting on the couch and boxers watching television all day. More of a expert in trying to find more efficient solutions to common problems that involve doing a little bit less work or doing a lot of work on the front end so that tasks are simpler later on. That's going to make a lot more sense a little bit later, and we'll talk about that over the course of this video. For right now, though, you're probably wondering, who am I? Well, I'm Wes Walton. This is me right here, the goofy looking dude in the background. I've been a programmer for, I don't know, 8 years now, and I've worked for Rob Booker for about 14 years. Here's the back of my head, which is pretty awesome. No, it's not. That is just terrible looking back of the head. Here I am again, laughing and looking kind of goofy. Here's the back of my head again. It's pretty cool. And moving forward, there's me over there just kind of twiddling my thumbs. And here's me and Rob doing a presentation about robots, about the Finch robot, actually. Here I am again, probably saying something a little bit nonsensical or sarcastic. I think you get the point. I don't think we really need to look at me all that much more. I'm not nearly good looking enough to be on the camera. So we're going to get back to what I do best, which is being lazy. And again, not the classic sense of the word. Not the sitting around sweating in my boxers because I'm, I don't know, drinking too much Rockstar or something. Whatever the case. I'm talking about the art of changing your circumstances by doing less. So there's a common idea in the world today that you receive the following for packing more to-do items into your day. So for being more busy, you get more fulfillment, more success, you get good looks and happiness and efficiency and smartness and, brain stuffs. You just, for some reason, the world today thinks and tells us and teaches us that if we are busy, if we stay busy, if we keep being busy and getting busier, then we get all of this good stuff. So maybe that's not the exact line of thinking, but it is a common belief that more work and a busier schedule leads to success. That applies to traders, business owners, employees, students, etc. We all grew up believing that hard work pays dividends. The more you do, the more you get, right? What if we were wrong? What if working hard does not always pay dividends? What if we are actually powerless, and the harder we struggle, the worse it gets, like quicksand? Success and achievement should not feel like quicksand. In case you're not familiar, quicksand is of a consistency of such that if you get stuck in quicksand and you start sinking, the more you struggle, the deeper you sink. So the way that I feel is you shouldn't have to feel like that. You shouldn't have to feel like you're trapped, unable to move, unable to even struggle, and eventually unable to even breathe until you're in over your head. Instead, success and achievement should feel like sleep. Now, I know that may sound counterintuitive, but I have some good reasons for this. If you can't sleep, you make changes in your life, your house, your diet, your medication to get some sleep. Nobody is happy when they are unable to sleep. Sleep is essential for our bodies and brains to function properly. Lack of sleep causes instabilities in our bodies, our emotions. It makes us irritable. It makes us that we can't function on a daily basis. It makes it difficult to do daily things. And eventually it affects our performance in work or sports or just about everything. Lack of sleep is terrible. So we all will do whatever it takes to get sleep. Success, whatever your definition of the word, should be just as essential as sleep. Feeling like a failure can cause instabilities in our bodies, our emotions, our performance in work or sports, in everything. Just like sleep. We are willing, even eager, to make changes in order to get a good night's sleep. I will do anything to get a good night's sleep. I'll go to the doctor. I'll change bedding. I'll change beds. Like, I'll even try sleeping on the couch. I'll sleep on a cot. I don't care what it takes. I will find a way to get a good night's sleep if I find that I'm not sleeping right. I think it's time to be willing, eager, anxious, or even aggressive about making changes in our own lives to break through the invisible barrier holding us back. And why is it an invisible barrier? Well, at the point that you finally, figure out that there's nobody actually holding you back, and that playing the blame game or saying that it's someone or something that's keeping you from being successful, once you figure out that there's nothing actually holding you back, then it's just an invisible barrier. It's something that's not really there. Something that is being made up in our minds to make it so we can't actually progress any further. Which brings me to advantageous adaptation. That is a word or a phrase that I just made up. And if I didn't just make it up, I don't know where it's written anywhere else. But regardless, the point I wanted to make with this is human beings have a remarkable, potentially limitless ability to adapt to new situations. It could be as simple as putting on a coat because it's cold, or finding something else to watch because your favorite TV show was canceled, which we all know how that is. Our favorite TV show gets canceled, or it's summer and your show's not on anymore and you have to wait till the next season. What do? You adapt. Or it could be something more complex, like having a baby, or changing jobs, or moving, or a chronic illness, or a natural disaster, or whatever it is. It could be something simple, or it could be something complex. But humans have the ability to adapt to new situations, more so than any other organisms. Most living organisms adapt to new environments in one way or another. They will change over time, or they will find a nice hole to go live in, or they'll find shelter from a storm. But no other living thing has the ability or even the will to change and adapt themselves the way humans can. We may be fragile physically, but we are pretty darn scrappy. We find a way. Fragile physically, when you think about it, there are a lot of plants and a lot of animals out there that can survive a lot harder beating than humans can. But, man, we will find a way around it. We will find a way to make sure that we don't get hurt, or we don't get, we don't die. We struggle to survive, probably more so than anything else. And that's something that's pretty unique to humans. Another unique advantage we have is that by sheer force of will, we can change our environment or even relocate to a new one. So if we don't like living in the desert, we go inside and turn on the air conditioning. Air conditioning was a way of changing our environment. It may not seem like that, but it is. We feel like if we go a few days without bathing, we start to stink. So what do? We adapt and we take showers. And that's what soap is for. Our breath smells and we get cavities, so we brush our teeth. We adapt. We find a way, and by sheer force of will alone, we can change things around us, add things to ourselves, add things to our routine to make it better, to make our environment better. However, more often than not, we don't realize the depths of these abilities until we are forced into a situation where we must adapt. So, one of the biggest problems I have found in my own life and with others as well is we think that we aren't quite as capable of changing as we actually are. when humans have proven over centuries and millennia that we are perfectly capable of changing and adapting to new situations. And we'll get a little bit more into that a little bit further into this video. Adaptation is a basic function for living things. It is so basic, in fact, that we give no thought to developing it as a talent. We always figure it's just an instinct and primarily a survival mechanism. So we feel like it's we get into a fight or flight type of a situation, and we fight, or we might even flight. I mean, we'll run or we'll fight. We'll make sure that we don't die, or that we don't get hurt, or that we don't get into a financial situation that that would strand us somewhere, strand us without a job. Whatever the case, we just figure instinct will kick in, and our flight or fight or flight response will actually help us get through whatever situation comes along. And in a sense, that is true. We are a very scrappy species. We make it work when we have to. But what if we actively worked to develop adaptation as a talent instead of just a survival skill? What if we thought of it as something we could be good at? That may not sound like a very appealing thing, like watching the Survivor Man or watching those people that go out in the woods just to see if they can make it. Like, that may not sound all that appealing. That may not sound very cool or anything like that, but there are all kinds of situations where we need to be able to survive and we need to be able to adapt. And instead of having that as an instinct, what if we actively and proactively made it a part of who we are? And that way we don't have to worry so much about these situations where we have to survive or adapt because we know we can work through it. What if there were a way to practice surviving or adapting to new situations? Is it like a muscle that we can exercise and a skill we can master? Well, yeah. Like, we all know that we can. Taking the Survivor Man and that type of personality as a little bit of a model for that. They practice. They keep their skills honed, and they continue to master being able to survive in the wilderness. And I'll never be able to do that, but there are a lot of ways that we can practice to have it in real life situations. So is it like a muscle that we can exercise and a skill we can master? Indeed, it is. But what does this have to do with trading? What does this have to do with success? And what does this have to do with being lazy? Because it sounds an awful lot like unlaziness, especially when we keep using the metaphor or the the real life model of like Survivor Man and people who go into the wilderness to survive, and etc. Like, that's a lot of work. And it doesn't sound a lot like I am good at being lazy if that's what I consider being lazy. So why should you care? Well, I don't know. But Albert Einstein seems to. One of my favorite quotes of all time was by Albert Einstein. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. I love that quote. It's something I actually use almost too frequently, I think. But I always think of this whenever I'm thinking about trading a system that I've done before, or whenever I think about trying to build something that I attempted in the past and I just wasn't able to do it, or trying to use the table saw without the guards. It's just, if I expect not to cut my fingers off next time, then it's pretty insane. So I need to leave the guards on the table saw. That's a story for another time, though. I wanted to tell you a little bit of a story from my past that illustrates a little bit more about uh, what it is I'm talking about. Strategic laziness. All right. So 8 years ago, I sat down at a Jiffy Lube, and I was waiting for them to finish changing the oil in my car. I had been thinking, I don't know, I was thinking a lot in those days 8 years ago about my future because my job was great. I was making more money than I was actually worth. I had a great boss, but I was getting this horrible feeling like it was all temporary. Like at any time, it could all fall apart, and I couldn't shake that feeling. It was on my mind 24/7. What would I do if I was fired? What would I do if the company collapsed? I had no degree. I had no time to get one, and I had no prospects. Just I felt like if my job fell through, if this great life that I had came to an end, I had no idea what I was supposed to do, and it scared the crap out of me. It was so scary, especially since I had a family to think about and no way of figuring out my life beyond the day I was in. Like I never knew what was happening the next day. There's so many scenarios floating around in my mind, and I was having difficulty processing them. There were so many things that were just bouncing around in my head, and it was overwhelming. Each problem that I thought of had to have a solution, and then there had to be contingencies and backups for the backups. And what about any problems I can't consider? What if I miss something? What if I don't realize one of the problems that could come? And then I wouldn't have a solution for it. Then what if all these scenarios become invalid in a year? Then it just, like, what am I supposed to do then? Then I have to go back through and create all these new scenarios and try to figure out what to do with my future then. So my head was swimming. And that brings me back to where I was sitting at this Jiffy Lube in St. Clairsville, Ohio, waiting for my car to finish up in the oil change. And so I was waiting in the waiting room, and I had brought along a book about MetaTrader 4 programming. The MetaTrader 4 programming language is called MetaQuotes language, or MQL. And I had planned to skim through the book a little bit just to keep myself occupied while I was waiting for this oil change, because it usually took a long time. So when I started skimming through the book, I had a realization, and it changed the way I viewed everything. Since everything I had been thinking was merely speculation, everything I was coming up with, all the scenarios, it was all speculation. So any solution was speculation based on speculation, and it was way unproductive and way stressful. So here was a question I asked myself. How do you prepare for any eventuality if every new variable in the equation changes all possible solutions? Even the question is complicated. Well, the answer is you don't. You can't prepare for any eventuality because every new variable in the equation changes all possible solutions. You would drive yourself insane trying to think of every single way that everything could go wrong. And quite frankly, it's pretty depressing. The answer is you just don't. You can't. You can't prepare for any eventuality. You can't have a scenario tree that shows every single possible solution. So the answer is you develop your adaptation reflex. How you adapt to things, the first thing you do. That day, sitting in the waiting room of that Jiffy Lube, I read the entire MetaTrader 4 book and wrote my first program, all while I was waiting for my car to get an oil change. Ever since that day, I've been calculated and determined in building that reflex. And my thought process is, well, if I can't prepare for every eventuality, if I can't think of everything that could go wrong and a solution for each one of those problems, then I would make sure that I was prepared to do what it takes to succeed. That sounds really obvious, but we're going to get a little bit more into that here in just a few minutes. And it's going to start to make a little bit more sense why it's not quite so simple as you would think. I didn't want to worry about what ifs. I just wanted to make sure that I can instinctually react to constantly changing conditions. Not overreact, but react to situations and conditions that were always changing. All right, now ask yourself, what is the first thing you do in a crisis? You yourself, not what you know you should do or whatever else, but you yourself, what's the first thing that you do in a crisis? Do you remain cool and collected, or do you panic? Do you get scatterbrained? Do you add more activities or responsibilities to distract yourself from the issue that's going on in your life? Do you become a recluse and shut everyone else out? Do you lock yourself in your basement so that no one can talk to you? Do you get all depressed? Do you schedule extra therapy sessions? You know, I none of these things are wrong or right. But what is it that you do? Do you refuse help from others and determine to fix it yourself? That's a big one. Are you trying to do everything yourself? What if that crisis is a bad trade or a bad set of trades? Do you panic and close them before they have a chance to come back? Do you add more trades and hope it will come back? Do you shut down your platform and try to forget about trading? Do you lie to the people around you, telling them it's going fine? Do you blame the market? Do you blame yourself? Do you try to learn from it? What is it that you do when you have a bad trade or a bad set of trades? Because that is a crisis. And you might find that some of your reactions in a bad set of trades is also similar to what you do in a crisis. When something happens, something goes wrong, what do you do? The same thing with trades. And now we're actually going to talk about strategic laziness, what we actually wanted to talk about in the first place. A very natural response to life becoming hectic or stressful is to either make it more hectic and stressful or shut down completely. And what I mean by this is, let's say you have something coming up, an event that's coming up. Rather than trying to just calm down and take it a step at a time, you start trying to do everything. You pile it all on at once, and you get overwhelmed, but you just keep piling more on, thinking that for some reason piling more on is going to make it better. Or in some cases, you might just shut down where you get nothing done because you can't focus. It's just too overwhelming. And instead of doing some things or trying to get it done a little bit at a time, you just can't seem to do anything. And it's completely understandable, and it's a completely natural response for a lot of people. You experience rough roads, so you add more stuff, get busier, more frantic, make bad decisions, or you become depressed, you lose motivation, and just stop everything. Most drivers understand that when driving in adverse conditions, you should simply slow down. Rarely is there a situation where speeding up or stopping is the best option. Slowing down, however, is always a good idea if something seems off. Rain, snow, road construction, traffic, you slow down and assess the situation before you proceed with a specific course of action. Think about it. If you are in the snow or you see road construction ahead, if you slam on your brakes and immediately stop, well, first of all, if you're in snow, that's probably not going to happen. You will probably spin out of control. And with road construction, if you just slam on your brakes, if you don't cause an accident, you are going to cause way more traffic by slamming on your brakes. Whereas if you slow down when you see that something is a little off, then it gives you time and it helps you to calm down, to assess the situation, find out what it is that's going on. If traffic is stopped, then yeah, you'd come to a stop. But you got to slow down before you do that. And if you're in the rain, you probably aren't going to stop. You're probably just going to slow down. Anyways, regardless, if you see traffic and immediately stop or immediately speed up, you place everyone around you, including yourself, in danger. And the same goes for everything else on this list. Any other type of adverse conditions, really, that you can think of in this scenario with driving, you always slow down first. You slow down, and then you can figure out what's going on. If everyone's just slammed on their brakes every time something looked a little off in traffic or when they're driving, then, man, we'd have so many more accidents. When you suddenly find yourself in an unforeseen situation, your reaction should be slow down. Don't panic. Don't make hasty decisions. Assess the situation. Sleep on it. Assess the situation again. Obviously, if you're driving, you would not be sleeping on it. And there's probably a lot less of these that you should do if you're driving. But we're talking about an unforeseen situation in your life. Some crisis that comes up, some big deal that comes up that you just, it requires a lot of thought, and it requires some sort of action. Well, before you take that action, do these things. And then after you sleep on it the first time, assess the situation again. And you may be tempted to act swiftly or quickly, like to make a decisive, like, first blow or whatever. But don't. Make a plan. Then sleep on it. Then modify the plan. Then sleep on it. Then throw out that plan. And then sleep on it. And then make another plan, and then sleep on it, and then throw out that plan, and then sleep on it, and then make another plan that combines what you can remember from the first 3 plans because you threw them out. Are you starting to get the picture? It's starting to make a little bit of sense. It probably isn't. It probably just sounds nuts because whenever you're in some big crisis, whenever something happens that's unexpected, like you lose your job or you get into some bad trades or I don't know, you're having trouble in your marriage or whatever else, whatever is going on, if it's that big of a deal, it requires very calculated and very determined response. So in other words, your first reaction should be to do nothing. Now, I can't even stress this enough that if you are acting out of emotion or acting out of fear or frustration or anger or excitement, then you're probably not going to make good decisions. That's what brings us back to the don't make hasty decisions. Don't think, oh, well, I know this is the right course of action because why? Because it sounds good? Your first reaction should be to do nothing. Because if it's that important, it requires diligent thought. All right, let's finish the Jiffy Lube story. So I felt like I was on a fork in the road, like I needed to solve something in my life. Even though there was nothing technically happening, I felt like it was decision time. I felt like it was now or never. I had to do something. Something had to be done right now. I needed to figure out my future right now, and then I needed to make it happen. I needed to, I needed to quit my job and become a circus clown or something. I was thinking in my state of being frustrated and being scared, I felt like it was now or never. Go big or go home. I was close to just making any decision just so I could feel like I was picking a direction because I felt like I had no direction. So I just wanted something. And that's not the right frame of mind to make major life decisions. So what did I do? I decided to not decide. I decided the best thing I could do was not make a decision. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive. Again, like a lot of this sounds counterintuitive. A lot of this sounds like it's just mumbo jumbo and hogwash. But sometimes the best thing you can do is not decide. Not yet, at least. So what did I do instead? I decided to prepare. Again, this is working on that adaptation response. I wanted to prepare myself for what could happen. What might happen? I had no idea. There was no way of telling. But I needed to be prepared. I needed something. So I made my first program for MetaTrader 4. It was terrible. Like, it was really bad. And it was only barely functional. But instead of deciding to pour myself into developing MT4, starting my own company, I mean, which is kind of what it sounds like I was trying to do. You know, I read the entire MetaTrader 4 book. I built a program. I was gung-ho about programming. And I decided not to do any of the things that sounded like life-changing and like super direction-filled or whatever. Instead, I used my current job as a platform for building a skill. So I work for Rob Booker. He's one of the most well-known currency traders in the world, and he's awesome, and he's good at what he does, and he's good at helping others to do the same. So what was I doing? So I decided to use my current job as a platform for building a skill. I continued to develop robots and indicators and other tools for others and for myself, for others for hire, and for myself just because it was fun and it was a way to keep my skills up. Not only that, though, I observed real traders to obtain a variety of perspectives. I figured if all I was seeing was my own perspective, my own thought process about trading, then it wasn't going to lead to much. And it goes back to what Albert Einstein said. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I needed a variety of results. I needed a variety of things being done so that I could see a variety of results, some of which are good, some of which are bad. But I found new ways to combine those with my perspective as a programmer. If I had stuck with my perspective as a programmer, then I never would have been able to build anything that was profitable, because I would have continued to see it as a programmer and from that perspective. But I observed traders that were making money, real traders that were trading real accounts, people that were actually either trying to or were making a living from trading. I wanted to see how it worked and how it didn't work. And that way I could formulate something other than just my own perspective as a programmer. So in essence, I spent the last 8 years assessing the situation and looping through the same steps we just talked about. Slow down. I slowed down. I decided not to panic. I did not make any hasty decisions. I assessed the situation. I slept on it. I made a plan. I slept on it again, and so on and so forth. And I put myself into this loop, making sure that I would not do anything that would jeopardize my future, all the while preparing for my future, preparing for whatever eventuality might come along. That's the whole point. I spent 8 years assessing the situation. Hopefully, it will not take you 8 years, especially if you're in a situation where you've become unemployed or something else happens then obviously you don't want to take 8 years to find new employment or to figure out how you're going to make it to support your family or whatever else. But the point is, it should not be a fast process unless you already have something else lined up, and in which case you've already been preparing for it. So all the while, during this 8 years, I was creating more robots, indicators, and tools. I was also trading using those robots, indicators, and tools. So again, I was building skills. I was looking for new perspectives. I was looking to make sure that I wasn't caught up in one thing, especially if the time ever came that I was unemployed or had to make a big decision. Then I would have multiple directions that I could technically go, and I could make a very informed decision. And that brings us to the present day. And I am finally making my first decision in 8 years. Okay, this isn't my first decision in 8 years. I've done a lot of deciding on things in the past 8 years. Like, I decided what to have for lunch today. And I decided, I don't know, to have another child. We decided, there's a lot of things we've decided on since then. But the main big thing that I was stressed out about, I made 0 decisions about. It goes back to I was concerned about my future, the future of my family, the future of my job, and I made 0 decisions in 8 years regarding that. I just worked and made sure that I was a good employee, and I made sure that I did things appropriately, and that I made sure that I developed skills and talents that would allow me to transition to something else, or to many other things, just whatever the case. You are actually among the first to even know these robots exist. In all seriousness, nobody has these except me. I didn't want to sell them. I didn't want to give them away. I didn't want to do anything with. I wanted to just trade them myself. They're not just programs and code. They're my creation. They're almost a decade of my life. A decade of my life's work put into these things. I put my heart and my soul into these robots, developing them, testing them, trading them, going back to the beginning sometimes, reevaluating strategies and creating new ways of testing and refining and everything else. And, it's been a lot of work, and it's not like I just finished them, but they're my babies. They're my creation. If I were to say I created anything, it would be my children and these robots. That's all I can say I've ever really, really put my heart and soul into. I've never sold them or given them away, and I've only mentioned them a couple of times in passing, which is why you've probably never heard of them, even if you've heard of me. But I'm not just trying to sell you another robot collection. That would make this just another product, and that would make you just another customer, and that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want to demean or lessen the value of what I have done, and I don't want to treat you like you're not of value or like you are just buying another product. I've put together a program, and I designed it to take you through a succession of robots and trading systems and prepare you to trade not only profitably, but with calm and collected determination to achieve and succeed, and to prepare you for any eventuality, to help you stretch that adaptation muscle and exercise it and become fluent in being strategically lazy. I want to help you to figure out what I figured out, which is that not everything has to be done quickly, and not every decision has to be made hastily. And then even after the crisis comes, even after that big thing that just changes your life, or that you feel is changing your life forever, even after that, you have directions to go. And you don't have to stick with one. You can stick with multiple directions. You can trade multiple robots. You could trade multiple systems. You could use several indicators. I just want to help you learn how to adapt to other situations. The goal is trading should be like sleeping. Trading should be like sleeping. Success should be like sleeping. You should want it so much that you're willing to do whatever it takes. You're willing to change. You're willing to adapt. And success is so essential that you will get it. If this sounds like you, then this program is for you. If you'd like more information on how the program works, and for purchase information, just submit the form below. It's right below this video. It's just your email address, basically, so I can send you some follow-up information. And also, if you don't want to go through the program, there's still a free gift on the next page because you deserve something awesome. Let's face it, you just sat through this long video of me talking about nothing. You deserve something for that. I hope to see you on the other side, and I hope to see you in the program, or at the very least, I hope the free gift on the next page makes up for you having to sit here through this whole video and at least helps you a little bit in your own trading. Thank you, and goodbye.